welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. I'm excited to talk to you about going from career confusion to career clarity. Now, Devon wrote me last week and she said, Aaron, I'm feeling stuck in my career. I'm not quite sure what my next best step is. I think I just need to find another job, but I don't want to land right back in the same mess again. Thank you, Devon. Does that sound familiar to you? So a lot of us right now are looking for new roles, whether that is because we have to, or that is because we know that we are on a sinking ship and we want to get off of the sinking ship and ideally onto nice, firm, dry land with our industry, our career, or profession. So whatever that might look like for you, you are in the right place, because today we'll be talking about 4 questions to get clear on what your best next step is, as well as the top 5 fears that keep people stuck in go nowhere jobs for way too long, and where your next ideal career path starts for long-term fulfillment. So let's see. Professionals around the world right now, honestly, are adjusting their career paths due to the current socioeconomic crisis. And some of the big questions I hear are quite often, how do I prepare myself successfully for a career pivot? So what does that look like for me? Because I need to pivot out of my industry for whatever reason. Maybe I need to find a different type of role. How do I leverage my expertise? The other top question I get is, what if I've been in the same industry or role for a while? Can I pivot my career? The good news for you, if that is you, is yes, you can pivot your career, even if you've been in the same industry for quite some time. The key here is to leverage transferable skills and pivot into something that is similar, but not exact. And hopefully that's trending upward and not downward. The other big question I get is, how will I know that I'm making the right move for me? Good question, and we'll be going over that in more detail today. So making a career move is a big deal. I mean, it's scary, particularly right now when there's so much uncertainty and we're not quite sure if I do make a career shift, is that job going to go away too? So this is a big fear for a lot of people, and rightly so. And smart professionals want to know how to position themselves to pivot quickly and with minimal energy investment involved in their part. So let's get clear on where you are right now in order to make the right move, because it's incredibly important to become very clear on why you feel stuck or unhappy in your job or your career. So let's see if any of these following align with you and what you're feeling right now. The first one is, now again, just keep in mind, make a note to yourself if any of these align with what you are feeling right now. You don't like what you do. Okay. You might not mind who you work for or who you work with, and you might even have good relationships there, but you really find your work boring, overwhelming, or soul-sucking in some way. You probably stayed in your current job for way too long, far longer than you should have, because you like who you work with. So that is number 1. So if that aligns with you, just put a check mark mentally beside that, and we'll move forward. So number 2 is, you don't like who you work for. So you like what you do, but you don't like who you work for or with. In other words, you like what you do for your role, but your boss is a jerk, your upper management is crazy, or your work culture is toxic. And at the end of the day, your top feeling is, get me out of here. So if that's you, then put a mental check beside number 2. Now let's see, if you are okay with who you work for mostly, and you like what you do, but you aren't seeing the career results you want, that's number 3. And this is you if you've been maybe passed over for promotions, you feel left out of the loop on things, and maybe you struggle with a feeling that you're not really connecting with people like you would like to, and if you've been a victim of workplace gossip. In other words, you probably feel unappreciated, overlooked, and you work really hard and you're not seeing career results. So that's number 3. So put a mental check mark beside that if that is you. Now, last but certainly not least, you are okay with who you work for or with and what you do, and you're seeing growth, but you are completely drained at the end of the day. In other words, you like who you work for, you like your company, you may have even received some promotions, you're moving up within the organization, and you really like where you are, but at the end of the day, you just feel like your job is sucking the life out of you some way. Maybe you're stressed, overwhelmed, or anxious. And it's not that you don't like what you do, or at least you feel like you should like what you do, and you don't really want to leave, but you have this nagging suspicion that something's not right, something's not in alignment. So that's number 4. Amin asks, is there any rule of thumb for how long we should stay in one position, 2, 3, or 4 years, any minimum? The general rule of thumb is 3 to 4 years, max 5, and then you should be looking for a shift. You don't have to change companies, but you need to be looking for some sort of shift, either that's a move up within the organization, a lateral move, or some sort of movement. And quite simply, that's for multiple reasons. One, you don't want to be in the same role doing the same thing, but for so long. And also, it helps you grow as a professional. And on your dossier, it makes it look like you are growing and expanding as a professional. Okay. Even if it's a lateral shift, you're learning new skills, you're networking with new people. So that's very important. Let's see who else we have. Kia says number 4. So that's her. So she likes who she works with, what she does, but she's not really seeing results and she's not really sure why. And this is very common. So Eric says number 3, but I'm not sure how long it'll fare since I pivoted from engineering to networking. Fair enough. So if you pivot to a new role, things may be a bit new and you're not really sure, is it because it's new or is it because it's not working out? Which one is it? Melissa says, I would say 4, but it could be me being a workaholic. There is that. We could be self-sabotaging. That does happen. All right, so let's get into what you should do. So no matter which one you picked, there is a solution for you. So let's talk about it. What should we do? So your potential path looks like this. You need to consider a career pivot or shift to a different focus if you answered number 1 or number 4 or both. So number 1 is you don't like what you do. And number 4 is you like what you do, or you feel like you should like what you do, and you like where you work, but you aren't seeing results and you feel completely drained. So why should you make a career pivot or shift out of your current career path if it's number 1 or 4? So you don't like what you do altogether. Well, that's obvious because you are drained. It's not in your strength zone. What we want to make sure is that when we're developing an ideal career path for ourselves, that it is within our strength zone. That is huge because if it's not in our strength zone, even if we feel like it's something we quote unquote should do, I say that's a lot of executive coaching because I coach people at upper level management and they are in roles because sometimes they feel like they should be, right? And they stay there because they feel like, well, this is what you should do. I mean, and isn't the American dream to work really hard and move up the ladder? Not necessarily. That's not necessarily for everyone. It's very important that we rely on our strengths and leverage our strengths in our career path. So if you're feeling drained, anxious, and overwhelmed, or you just flat out don't like what you do at all, and it's boring and miserable, then it's time to consider a pivot into another career. We'll talk a little bit more about what that might look like for you. So again, if you're feeling drained and miserable at work, even if you feel like you quote unquote should be great at what you do, you might need to consider a pivot out of what you do altogether. Now, as Melissa pointed out, you may be self-sabotaging because you're overworking. So if you're drained and exhausted, it could be because you're working too much. So keep that in mind. What I also recommend is if you want to make a solid career pivot successfully into a new type of career position, definitely want to get a strengths assessment. So if you answer number 1 or 4, and this is you, then you definitely want to get a strengths assessment because that helps you identify exactly what your energy zones are, what they call the zone of genius is for you. That's very extremely important moving forward in career fulfillment because I coach tons of clients every year in career clarity. And oftentimes what happens is we go to college at 18, we think, okay, engineering or I don't know, architecture or whatever it is what I want to be in. So we go, we get our degree, we go through college, we graduate, we take the first job we can because we need to have a job. And then we just follow open doors until one day we wake up and we look around and go, what am I doing here? I don't even like what I'm doing. And that's what I call the career wake up call. We have a wake up call. We have that pivot moment where we realize it just hits home to us that we've just been kind of on autopilot, just moving forward and not really thinking about what is a strategically best next step for me. Because we need to pay the bills. After college, we need to get a job, we need to pay the bills. Probably then we're young and we probably work too much anyway. And we have different standards. And then as we mature and gain wisdom and experience, we suddenly realize this really isn't for me. So I highly recommend a strengths assessment because that'll give you a great idea of what your natural work styles are to you. Now, this is not an indication of ability. Again, it's an indication of energy because we can all do just about anything we want. It might take a lot more energy. So if you happen to have answered also number 3, so to refresh your memory, that is, you like who you work for and who you work with and what you do and all that good stuff, but you're not seeing any career results at all. And you feel left out, you feel like maybe you're a victim of workplace gossip, etc. I highly also recommend that you get, in addition to the strengths assessment, a 360-degree review because it's important to understand what's going on here. And I coach quite a few clients every year that one of the big roadblocks they have is actually themselves. It's a character trait or something that they're doing that's putting people off and they have no idea. It happens all the time. It could be how we communicate. It could be how we don't communicate. It could be anything. We might be interrupting people. We might be more dominant than our field calls for, whatever that looks like. It's oftentimes a work style disconnect. And in fact, most workplace conflicts that I coach people through and facilitate a successful outcome of is due to dissonance in work styles. And I also recommend extended disc, but that's because I'm a perfectionist and went out and found like the best career growth module out there, and extended disc is probably the best. Now, extended disc does have to be administered by a professional, but it is extremely comprehensive, and I'm happy to share some additional information if you'd like to learn more. Now, there's another one. So outside of just having to find a different type of industry, what if you just need to find another job? Flat out, you just need to find another job. If you answer number 2, you like what you do, you're perfectly satisfied, you feel good about what you do, but you don't like where you work. You just need to find another job. Okay. Just get out of there, get out of the toxic work environment and find a different job. Great job somewhere else. Now, if you also mark number 3, and again, these are for the folks that maybe you like what you do and you're okay with what you do, but you're just not seeing results, you can find another job. And here's probably what will happen. If it's a work style disconnect or some sort of behavior that we're exhibiting that's actually self-sabotaging us, it will probably happen again. So I highly recommend that you do get an assessment and understand exactly where you are with that. Now, if you're interested in growing yourself and overcoming any particular roadblocks that you might have, I have 2 great books for you that I'll be happy to drop in the comments later on once we wrap up. But I'll mention them right now. And one is by Marshall Goldsmith, and the book is titled, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Again, that's Marshall Goldsmith, and the book is titled, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Now, for my professional driven ladies, I have another great book, and that is by Sally Helgesen, and that is How Women Rise. Again, that's How Women Rise by Sally Helgesen. I highly recommend that book. If you're a driven, experienced professional woman, you must have that book. I seriously recommend that book. It's eye-opening, truly is. So yes, great, Melissa. I will send you some information for sure. So let's talk about the top 5 fears that keep people stuck in miserable, no-go-nowhere jobs. And number 1, the biggest fear is the fear of losing financial rewards. So with some of my clients, even though they know they need to move on, and we've discovered this during our career growth sessions together, they stay there because they either have a good amount of severance built up, they have a great 401k, or some sort of benefit there, or they're just, quite frankly, complacent. Okay, so number one, money is a number one roadblock between most people and a career change. And for some people, it's so complex and emotionally charged, it become almost impossible to think rationally around it. And if this is you, my tip is to seek help from a certified financial professional to get some real insights and some objective clarity around what your options are, so you don't have to accept status quo. All right, because oftentimes pivoting a career does not necessarily mean starting over. And when I work with my clients in career clarity, that is not what we focus on. Okay, 99.99% of my clients do not find that they have to start all over again and start at the bottom and take a massive pay cut. That's not what we do. So we find other means to leverage their strengths and expertise to kickstart them into a great role at a good level that they're looking for, that's ideally fulfilling. So what is the other fear? So the second fear is the fear of the unknown and what to do next. So some people say better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Not really. So if this is you, you definitely want to start by establishing a plan, because oftentimes by planning, get our minds around what the next best steps for us are and helps us get unstuck. So every successful career transition starts with a solid action plan. And here's an overview of some of the key steps I share with my clients. So number one, have a target. You must have a target. If you don't have a target, it's extremely hard to hit it. What is your ideal role? And again, if you're not quite sure, get a strengths assessment, have a certified professional walk you through that, because I'll share with you, I have worked with clients before and they'll come to me and say, well, I've already had a strengths assessment, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, so why are we talking? Because if you don't have someone that's able to decipher that information for you and ask key questions, sometimes it's not as obvious to you as it is to the professional what the information, it will be meaningful to you to move forward. So, but you must have a career target. What's your ideal job? Because it's almost impossible to launch a successful search if you don't have anything to aim for. So you want to ideally select roles and types of roles that are related. So if you have different types of roles you like, we want to make sure they share a lot of common expertise. That'll help you tremendously in developing your dossier. And next week, we'll talk more about how to develop your dossier to stand out online. So number two is develop relevant career contribution stories. You don't want to just have the same humdrum bullet point resume. Also, another great thing about talking about our career contributions helps us understand a little bit more about what our expertise is, because while it may be very nebulous and in our heads, once we start writing it down, it becomes more clear. We get clarity around what our expertise truly is. Number three is share your stories in your resume and LinkedIn. So share your career contribution stories in your full dossier, your resume and your LinkedIn, to get more traction with the types of roles you're looking for. And then selectively apply for jobs that fit you best. Do not use the shotgun approach. That is not useful, great use of your time. It's a massive waste of your time. So you want to make sure that you're applying for jobs that you really want, because if you do it right, it takes a little bit of time to optimize your resume. And also, last but not least, be organized and disciplined. The better organized you are during your job search process, the better your results. So what's another fear? Well, number three, the fear of damaging relationships and quitting guilt keeps people stuck in go nowhere jobs far longer than they should. And in fact, my husband, when he was pivoting over a year ago now, he was like, well, I've built a lot of relationships here. I don't want to lose those relationships. And I get it. I know, because you make work friends and you don't want to leave them. Or I've heard this quite a bit. Well, I don't want to dump my role, my responsibilities, and my work on someone else. Okay, but that's also not a reason to sabotage your career either. So what's interesting is research has shown that professionals will stay in a job 75% longer than normal if they like who they work with. So my recommendation for you, if this is you and you feel like you might have this going on, is make relationships outside of your workplace. Connect with professional organizations, develop those relationships that are not tied to your workplace, and that will give you more confidence to move out of your current environment into something hopefully more fulfilling. So number 4 is a fear of failure or not being good enough. Now, this is very common right now because if you're a victim of downsizing, we tie our sense of self-worth to our jobs. So if you've been downsized, it's very likely that you don't feel great about that. And it's also common to take that on yourself. What did I do wrong? Well, it's not about you. It's just about financials. So don't take it personally. And what I recommend is develop what I call an impact inventory. So all of my clients must develop an impact inventory. And what is that? Well, that is literally a list of your impacts. And I highly recommend every professional keep an impact inventory with them at all times and develop this throughout their professional career. It's extremely powerful, not just for finding another job, but also if you want to go for a raise or if you want to provide that backup information at the performance review time, which has just happened for a lot of people. It's tremendously more powerful to have real actionable results of how you've been able to leverage your expertise on the job to a net positive outcome or a great impact to your organization, your team, or your client. Hence the term impact inventory. So develop that. And a great outgrowth of this is it will boost your confidence because you'll start to realize just how much impact you truly do have. And we all have much more impact than we give ourselves credit for. Trust me on that. And number 5, last but not least, is knowing what career path is best for you. So let's wrap this up and get really clear on how to define career clarity. So career clarity is truly at the intersection of your skills, expertise, and your interests. When you find that ideal spot, you can leverage your innate talents to springboard into another fulfilling role. So Melissa said, yes, I've made the grave mistake of not wanting to abandon my client and missed a great opportunity. Yeah. We develop those bonds, and it's fundamental and core to our human nature. It's very difficult to move past that sometimes. So we need to put ourselves first and be our own best friends a little bit more often. So if we need to find career clarity and you need to find that ideal intersection of your strengths, your interests, and your expertise, here's 3 great tips for you. Number 1, get a firm understanding of what your current expertise is. What are you known as a go-to person for? What do you excel at? What is your niche? And it's important to note here that you can be really good at something that you hate doing. Just put that out there because you can be an expert at something and you don't like to do it. This is possible. So again, our natural inclination, our work styles are not an indication of performance or ability. Our abilities are much much bigger than that. So we can actually be really good at something we really hate to do, and it's draining for us. But we don't want that in a part of our expertise list. We want to note exactly what our expertise are and also note what gives you energy and what drains you. Because the next step is to leverage your strengths. Now, this is often easier than you realize. So one of the things you want to consider from your expertise list, again, what gives you energy and what drains you? Those things that give you energy are more likely to be in your strengths zone. Other things you can ask yourself are you more people-oriented or are you more task-oriented? So if you had a task to do that was absent of people, or if you had something to do that was with people, less task-focused, which one would you gravitate towards? What demotivates you? What drains your strength? Again, what gives you energy? And oftentimes what gives you energy is in your strength zone, okay? So just keep that in mind. So leverage your strengths, and finding those are often not as difficult as you might think. Again, we want to know, number 3, what interests us. So what current trends excite you? And can you leverage a good portion of your expertise to pivot into another field or a related career path that's actually trending upwards right now? Because that will be extremely helpful to you. But most importantly, before we wrap this up, is we don't want to forget our gifts. Notice that I'm not talking about passion. I'm referring to gifts. Everybody has a gift or two, and these fly under the radar because it's something you're able to do and you don't even think about it. It comes natural to you. It's easy for you to do. Now, the challenge with gifts is they're not as sexy as passion. Passion sounds more emotional and dramatic, Well, I can also tell you can be super passionate about something you have absolutely no gift or strength in whatsoever. Take, for example, I'm very passionate about cycling, and I'm a fairly average cyclist. I will never be in the Tour de France. So it's not happening. All right. I may be passionate about it, but it's not my strength. So I need to stick to what my gifts are for what I want to do. Now, passion sometimes can be a fleeting interest. So I tend to not focus on passion so much because of the emotional component, and emotion doesn't have a whole bunch to do with logic. But your gifts is something that comes easy and it's natural for you. You don't even have to think about it. So this might actually take you a little bit of work to consider what your gifts are, because we don't think about them. They just happen, right? So if you've ever had somebody go, wow, you can do such and such, I find that really hard. And you go, oh, well, it's just natural to me. That might be your gift. Well, it's been a great pleasure to have something answered, or you have a question or a comment about career clarity. I'm happy to answer that for you. It's been a great pleasure, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com, or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.